How are you, Braden?
Doing good. We've got a new mentor joining us today. Kaylee, if you want to introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi guys, I took the last course of OK Coders and then I had an internship at a local startup.
What's a nerdy thing about you? That's what we did on our first day.
Ooh, a nerdy thing about me. I'm really into psychology.
Thanks for joining, Kaylee.
Sweet. Okay, so got quite a few people here, so we can go ahead and get started. Get all my tabs organized. Okay, so today we're talking about the box model. And so this is basically, it's going to be kind of familiar, and it's going to be a little more rudimentary than what we did on Saturday, but this is just to really cover our bases, and so that we can really understand everything that's happening on the page and kind of the inner workings of some of the more intricate things. And so this was in the homework, this diagram that Free Code Camp had. And so I think it kind of portrays things pretty well. And this is also very similar to if you like inspect anything, we could just use Starbucks again. If you go into your browser and you inspect something, like let's say this box right here, and it'll show you kind of something that looks pretty similar also in the browser. This is for like most elements. And so you see for this box here, it kind of shows that same thing here. But so by default, the browser says you've got content that's inside of a div, and you can manually set the height and the width of that property. So let's say you've got a div that has, I mean, it could be a div, it could be a p tag, it could be anything. It works for anything that just takes up space on the page. They all function under the same model. Anyway, so let's say we have a p tag and we give it a width of 200, then it will define this inner width here to be 200 pixels. And then if you're defining padding, that'll go around that 200 pixels, and you can define a border that'll go around the padding, and then margin will be on the outside of the border, right? And so this is the default for the browser, and this is actually not standard to how most people use it. And so we'll look at kind of the alternative and what would be kind of better practice. But let's start making some more. Today's going to be more of a ugly boxes day than build something pretty, but I think the ugly boxes definitely help explain the box model the best. So we're going to start out with a new file. It's going to be the regular index HTML. I also noticed that I did this last time. I'm going to go ahead and rename that to also be index HTML. That was just for, I don't know, I prefer it to just match. Okay, so let's do our HTML. What was it? Bang? Yeah, nice. Okay, so this is going to be box model. Sure. And we're going to go ahead and set up our CSS file and link that as well. So inside of day 5, we're going to make a new file called styles.css. Spelling is hard. Okay, and then here we're going to link that. Completion is style sheet, and href is style CSS. Okay. So inside of the body, we want a div, and we'll just call this box 1. And this is going to be the the box that we're going to style first. So in our CSS, we're going to have box 1, and we're just going to give it a background color so that we can see it, something super ugly. How about dark goldenrod? Perfect. Okay, so we got a background color, and then we want to give it a height and a width, and we could just say 200 pixels for both. And then let's go ahead and open this in live server and see if I messed anything up. Nice, perfect. Okay, so far we just have a box, and so there's the main properties that you can have on the box are going to be these that interact with the box model itself. So you get the height and width, we just did that one. Let's talk about the margin, the padding, and the border. And so I'm going to do a margin of 10 pixels. Let's do padding of 10 pixels. And let's do a border width of 1 pixel, border color, black, and border, what is this style? Solid. Okay. So now we can inspect it here. Okay, so we've got this box, and you can see if we, from hovering here, that the blue is the content, the padding is this 10 pixels, like all goes all the way around. The border is 1 pixel. We can make it a little bigger just so we can see it, make that another 10 pixel border. Black is the border, padding is on the inside of it, and then margin is what's pushing it off the page on the sides here. Okay, so that's kind of probably a little familiar, kind of have done some of that stuff on Saturday. Let's go ahead and just put some content inside of here. Let's just say some text. All right, and we expect that to be 10 pixels off because of the padding. So this kind of is showing, hey, there's padding above and on the sides. Okay, so those are just kind of like the main properties of the box model. And if I put a inner box inside of here instead of this text, do that, inner box, and give this some content. And we'll give this another ugly background color. This one can be blue violet. And we're just going to give this a width of 100 pixels, height of 100 pixels. Okay, so this box is inside of it. And let's look at what doing okay, so I set a property on every element to have border box. Switch this to content box. Let's see if we can see what changes here. Oh, I realized I wouldn't be able to see. Okay, so let's count Salvers one. Okay, so if you look at with the browser and you inspect this box, we told it we want the width to be 200 by 200. But this little floating thing right here, I'm not going to be able to hover it, but the little floating thing right here is actually 240 by 240. And so what that is because it's taking the width of the content, which is this ugly color here, and it's saying, hey, that is 200 plus 10% border and 10% margin. And so it's adding, or 10% padding. And so it's adding those all together. And so it's saying it's defining the width as just the blue part of box one. See how it's highlighting this? And so that inner blue part that's hovered is what is 200 pixels. And so this is a way that is kind of confusing to work with, because you said, hey, I want this box to be 200 pixels, but the box is actually taking up 240 pixels of space. And so this is what, like we were talking about on Saturday, kind of having a style reset. This is what you'll see in most places at just a root level that will just cover the entire app and just apply box sizing border box, which so content box is the default. We'll apply box sizing border box. And so now if we look at this, the entire container is going to be 200 by 200. And so this is basically going to say, I want the content to subtract from that 200. So the box itself, including the padding and the border, will add up to that width. And so this is kind of, it's generally, I think, easier to look at and easier to work with if you say, hey, I set this to be 200 pixels by 200 pixels, and it is the thing that you see on the page that is in black is 200 pixels by 200 pixels, right? So that is kind of the default that you'll see everywhere. So this is kind of a best practice that a lot of people use to just say, I want the size of the box to be based on the border, not on the content. Okay, so that's that part. Is there any questions about that? Nothing. Sweet, so that's pretty straightforward. The next part, oh, also, we can kind of talk about that for a second. So let's kill this live server. And let's go back to our day 4 activity that we worked on. We actually had that little bug, and after reviewing for today's class, that was actually the issue that we were running into. So if we check out our style CSS here and our day 4, let's open this up. So this is the bug we had here, that these inputs are a little bit longer than this button, and they're hanging over. And so the issue with that is that it was basing the width of this on the content, not on the border. And so if we were to go into this app and say, run that same rule over every element and say, box sizing, border box, go back and view our browser, now we are all within line. And so like,
hey, is like, if you're looking at a page, how can you tell if that's been applied or not, like from the browser?
So generally people will, I keep having the wrong way. Generally people will put this at the root levels. Like you could check, you know, if you see that in their code. Or you can say like, I want to look at this element, and I think we should be able to tell based on this. Let's see. So we've got this container is exactly 1200 wide, and this input is 1204. And so if we look at the input and it says, hey, it's width 100%, then it's kind of the indicator that they're using content box, because it's outside, it says it's 100%, but it's bigger than the width of its parent because its width is defined by the content plus its borders and padding and everything, which what I think, if I had to guess why this is. Yeah, so like, I think this is default on inputs is my guess. That this has a,
If you just click on the HTML tag in the DOM, won't it show you that class is applied to it?
if it was applied, if
If
you
you look
applied
at
the
this,
class to it, yeah. You see what I mean? Like if they wrote that tag like
Yeah.
like this, then you would see it show up for sure. But I think that they could put it anywhere, right?
Mm,
Or they could import a style sheet that would apply the same as well. But yeah, so it looks like this input has a defaulted padding of 2 pixels on the sides. And so 2 + 2 is 4. So this added up to the width of the parent plus 4, which is why it was hanging over by 4 pixels. And so that's because the padding was factored into the width and added on to the parent because the content was 100% plus the 4 pixels. So that added to the total width. And so setting that value to border box will fix that issue. Okay, so let's get out of day 4, back into day 5. Yeah, so this is just kind of like a general style reset. You'll see this on a lot of places. Okay. Oh, there's also some documentation that might be good to look at as well. So this one has 50 pixel padding. And so they're both with 300 pixels. But this one is actually 300 pixels. And this one is, oh, they don't both have 50 pixel padding though. Not necessarily. Border box, I think border box. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so this one added padding and it got bigger. This one has border box set and it added padding and it just moved the text to the edge of the padding and kept the box the same size. It's a good example there. Okay. Man, 15 minutes, we're flying through that. Does anybody have any questions about anything that happened in your homework that was over this border box stuff? We're going to kind of move on from this itself and talk about some other things that we kind of looked at that your homework used that we haven't talked about. So I think it would be good to pick up those and make sure we fully understand stuff like that. So that's going to be talking about these complex units. And what I mean by that is, so box 1 that we have here, we'll leave box 1. We'll make a new box. Actually, just make a button. That'll give me an idea of what the class of button doesn't work. When you click me in course. Okay, so we've seen things like margin top 10 pixels, right? Where's my button? Oh, I'm not. There we go. Okay, so I've got a button. It's got 10 pixel margin. And then you also have stuff like margin left. Like you can do all of these individually. You can do margin bottom 10 pixels, and you can do margin right. I don't know why I did it in such a wonky order, but top right, bottom left. Okay, so this is a lot of code repeating. And so the equivalent for that would be margin 10 pixels. And so that would cover all of these, right? I would replace them. We can just comment that out so we can see that, right? But let's say that we wanted to change the margin right to be 20 pixels, but the rest of them still be 10 pixels. Well, you could do margin 10 pixels and you could do margin right 20 pixels. But now you just have 2 lines of code doing the same thing, where margin actually is capable of handling multiple values at once. So instead of doing all of these together, or all of these 4 lines, or having both of these, you can do that. This margin 10 pixels, 10 pixels, 20 pixels, 10 pixels, 10 pixels. So this is going from the top clockwise. And so the top will be 10, the right will be 20, the bottom will be 10, and the left will be 10. And so you can manually set each of those values one by one going around. And so you can see, we can even do it something other than margin, like border size. What is this? Border size, border width. Yeah, okay. Wow, weird styling. Okay, so we've got 10 pixel borders on every side, except for this side is actually 20 pixels. And so we individually styled that, right? So this covers saying border top, border right, border bottom, border left, all individually. But so there's also, you can even shorten this down farther. And this is where it always gets weird, is when there's 3 values. I think it's like this. Nope. 10, 20. Let's look at width properties. Okay, nice. So whenever you say one value syntax, yeah, this is a great resource. We'll copy this. Come back to this. What is this, Indian? So whenever you pass one value syntax, example, border width 1M, it's going to apply that to all sides. That's, what we would think. Whenever you apply 2, it's going to say, okay, the first one will be top and bottom, and the second one will be the left and the right ones. And so you see that here. Whenever you apply 3, the first one represents the top, the second one represents the horizontal ones, and the third one represents the bottom ones. And so for our example, if I wanted to have just the right margin 20, then I would need to do this. Because the only way to pass in for the right one specifically alone is by doing all 4, because this one has those 2 match. But if I wanted the top to be different than the bottom, but I wanted the sides to be the same, something like top, side, bottom, side, so this would be 20. But then I wanted the bottom to be 30. Then now this could be shortened to where this will be both of the sides. You can delete one, right? I think the colors are messing with me, but that looks like 20 on both sides and then 30 on the bottom. But in our case, to do this one, we just want 10 pixels, 10 pixels. And that will give us a longer value for the right side. Sweet. So that's how you would do, and this works for anything that you can set top, bottom, right, left. There's also other values, like I wrote this in particular so that I could simplify it down here, right? But if I want my button to have a particular border, you don't have to write all of these values individually, you can write them all together. Something like border, it goes width, and then it goes style, and then it goes color. So I can write all of these in one, which, just comment this out so we're not confused here. So we've got 1 pixel all the way around. So we can make this, we can just do it like this. So the border width just doesn't matter because it's going to go overridden. But we want it to be black and solid, and then so we can say this is going to be dashed, and we can say this is going to be blue. And so now we've got a dashed line that follows the width that we're setting below individually. Is it possible to set something crazy like this inside of that? Well, let's see. I don't think so. I don't think CSS will throw me any errors either. Oh yeah, well. Yeah, so if you want to use something complicated, then you'll need to set the, I wonder if you can do something like parentheses around that. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a way to do that, but if you wanted to do something where you're individually setting the values all the way around, then you would want to set that separately, like we're doing here. So we're setting the border, and so we're kind of just like saving one line by doing it this way. And so earlier we looked at this here, right? This is one of our exercises one day, was styling this button to make it round like this. And so this is another property we haven't looked at super explicitly before, but it's going to be the border radius property. And so this works the same way, where you can style the button to have, you know, one border radius all the way around, like something like 8 pixels. Man, I gotta get rid of this for a second. This is ugly. Let's make this a little bit bigger also. Okay, so we've got nice round borders now, but if you wanted to make something crazy and fancy, then you could individually set the border radius properties also to be individual. Do 10 pixels, 20 pixels. You can even do something individual like this if you wanted to break them out individually. So you could say 30%. That's not numbers, 30%. And then 2M, just something crazy. So you can make it look all wonky like this. And so this can give you, like, you know, really interesting shapes on things. But it's also important to note is that these don't have to match the same values. As long as they all are values, then it'll handle them, you know, how it needs to. Doing percentages on border radius always gives you some weird stuff like this, but look kind of cool sometimes. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this setting multiple units under one property? Negative. Well, we kind of covered what we wanted in half the time. That means we get to look ahead.
Wait, it's 30% of what on for the border radius? Do you know?
Pretty sure it still follows the same rule, so it should be 30% of its parent, which is then, it's basically calculating what 30% is and then using that value in pixels as this value. So it's like its parent is
The page.
1450 divided by 3 is something. I don't know how I got 31. 483.
35. Oh,
So if I just set this to that, I think it should look pretty similar. No, not even close.
Can you set it back to 33% and then inspect it and see, will it show 30% or will it show the actual value?
do 435.
Hmm.
No.
Let's see. Using percentage and border radius.
It's not of 200 pixels?
Well, it should, a percentage follows the parent, right? So it should be, well, what is 30% of 200? 66.
60. 30% of 200.
Oh, it could be 30% of its own width. 66, 33. Yeah, I can't. Let's just copy this and do it twice.
Yeah, it's percentage of the border box. I just sent to Stack Overflow.
Okay. How did I make percentage? Hey, meeting controls, get out of here. Oh, extra one. 3366. Oh, so it's probably 66, 33. So this is the pixels, this is the percent. So the pixels, if I make this 33. Well, I thought it would match the height or the width, one of the two, right? I'm not sure. You'll see people use percentage in like really fancy stuff, but most of the time you have a button, border radius, it'll just kind of be 8 pixels. But okay, there's also some other things that we've never really covered a lot that I always have to look up documentation for. So let's look at that, like a box shadow. That was in your homework a little bit. This is also one of the ones that every single time I have to look up how to do because it's just got so many freaking values that you have to pass into it. So the box shadow takes offset X, offset Y, blur radius, spread radius, and then color. And so you can look at that. It's easiest to do like little nitpicky things like this just in the browser. So we can do box shadow. 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 10 pixels, sure. Pixels. And then black, bulk. Okay. To make this less severe. Okay, so the offset is going to just physically move it left. And so like you wanted everything to kind of appear like there's a light coming from the top left, which is I think kind of most standard, that it will have an offset of like 2 and 2, and now it looks like it's kind of floating up this way and the shadow is kind of to the bottom right. And this one was a blur radius, and so that's how far out you want the blur to be. So this is 5 pixels, 10 pixels, 20 pixels. And so it's not the width of the darkness, just how deep the blur itself goes. And then this will be, I want the darkness to actually be 20 pixels. I wish there was a way I could just sit there and measure this stuff too. I'm so dependent on these tools for the browser, but so this is how you make a really ugly shadow. So there you go. And also you can make the color itself a little lighter for situations that, you know, you want something kind of more subtle. So you could do a copy my values in. Don't have to type it out. Black. Make it some type of gray. And then I've got to save it. Okay, so we want to make this generally. I'm not great at shadows. I'll have some sort of style guide to follow, but I think something like 5 blur, kind of like 5. 5 might be pretty big too. It's pretty dark too. Make their blur smaller too. That needs way more blur. Yeah, so like the blur will kind of soften, you know, how intense it is. It also looks pretty dark just because the border is 2 pixels, so that kind of adds a lot to it as well, right? If I just make my border. What is that? I know you could give that a text. It's kind of interesting. That's a, oh yeah, that's another cool thing we can look at too. This is just kind of covering the more broad things that you'll see within your homework, especially on some of these later ones. Like kind of, they just assume that you've learned all of this stuff, but really just covering the most important things that we use more often. But we also looked at margin auto the other day. And so let's kind of dig into that a little more. So we've got this inner box. And so like if we just want to center this, it has a width that is technically half because we physically set it, but we could set it to 50% if we want. We will do that. And then we can do it a margin auto. And now it'll have equal margins on both sides. And so that will, it's kind of the easiest way to center things without having to style a bunch of weird like float properties and stuff like that. And so margin auto is kind of your best friend when you're doing stuff like that. Just trying to move things all the way to one side or all the way to the other. You can even do something like margin left auto. And then now it'll go all the way to the right because we want all the margin possible to just be on the left of it. And so it's just as much as it can push that far. Make a little note of that. However you comment in CSS. Sure. Sweet, okay. We've got like 20 minutes.
Do you want to?
Not. Yeah, what's up?
Could you,
Alex?
for the beginners, maybe, I don't know if they know the command code for commenting. How command
Oh, sure,
//
Yeah, command / is the lifesaver. You can comment a whole block if you want. I know, comment and uncomment everything. But also you'll see like there is a HTML comment style with the less than bang dash 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 greater than, and that is different than this one, and so it'll know what kind of file you're in, and it'll, you know, put in the correct comments. There's also JavaScript comments that are like this that we will get into later, and so it'll do that as well. Sweet. Does anybody want to talk about anything from Saturday that we kind of went pretty quick on? We can open this up again. What did you guys think about Saturday? Was it good to really dig in with your groups?
Yeah, I worked with, this is Annie, I worked with Julia, and he helped me look up how to put the grid in, and I really liked changing to that format versus how our harder attempt. I was like, oh, the grid makes sense, and so that's I started getting some more lights kind of coming on. Yeah, it was good stuff.
Sweet. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, we don't got to drag it out. I don't have a whole lot more for you today. Box model is important, but also kind of straightforward. And I think we kind of jumped the gun a little bit on Saturday. We had to get into some of this stuff, and you guys kind of did some of your research on your own before, but it's good to make sure that everyone's all caught up and on the same page with the things that are important. So your homework for before Saturday will be the next thing right after the box model, which was learning about Flex. And so the next time we meet, we're going to kind of really dive into responsive design. Probably at the end of the class, we're going to look at maybe how to do something like this, and to just having things next to each other and things that will collapse to being vertical whenever the page requires that. So that's the plan for Saturday. And then we're also going to cover positioning on Saturday. And so we'll have some homework for positioning. So it's going to be 2 steps, and I'll send the links to those after class. But positioning is what's going to help us make a nav bar, something like this at the top that will stay there, which this one doesn't. But you've seen, nav bars that stay at the top of the screen all the time. So cool. All right, guys, we can cut it off.
Sweet.
Right on. Thank you very much.
And I posted, FYI, in Slack, I posted a super famous example of box shadow being used, which is in Material UI, which is like all the stuff, like all of Google basically that you use follows that framework. And so like their button elevations and their card elevations, and like the way that it makes you feel like there's depth on the page is all done through that. So you can see that example there.
Oh, that might be what I was missing, is how to do it all the way around. You have to set all of the properties for each side of it with a comma.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
Well, so there's the answer to that also.
Cool. All right. See everybody on Saturday.